A woman appeared in Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, and as soon as she came in, she started being rude to the judge. She said she wasn't going to pay the fine and told them to do whatever they wanted. The judge said he would set up a payment plan to make it easier for her to pay the fine. But she was really stubborn and said, "Do whatever you want, I'm not paying anyway." For the first time, Judge Frank Caprio, who's known for his kindness and compassion, got angry in the courtroom. It's not clear if the court proceedings were made public, but Frank Caprio definitely mentioned it in his book, and what happened afterward changed Frank Caprio's life forever. Who would have thought that a kid who polished shoes while going to school would one day become the world's nicest judge? Looking at Frank Caprio's court rulings, it's hard to imagine how many deep wounds lie behind that smiling face. Kindness and compassion. Frank Caprio is a judge at the Municipal Court in Providence, Rhode Island. He was the chief judge. From 1985 to 2023, he served in that position for a solid 38 years, doing his duty with fairness. He became known from a reality TV show called Court in Providence. His court mostly dealt with traffic violation cases, things like illegal parking, speeding, or running red lights. But Frank Caprio always handled these cases with a smile and a bit of humor, often letting defendants off with just a fine. Sometimes he'd get kids who came along with the defendants to say the rules, making the courtroom a lighthearted place. Other times he'd even hug the defendants, showing empathy for their struggles. They tried to share. One day, a 96-year-old man came to their court, accused of overspeeding in a school zone. When the judge asked him why he was speeding, the elderly man's eyes welled up. He said he was rushing his 63-year-old son to the hospital because he has blood cancer. Without wasting any time, Frank Caprio wished the old man well and dismissed the case without a fine. His cheerful attitude was appreciated not just in America, but all over the world, even in other countries. Judges have even called Frank Caprio their ideal, but behind that smiling face lies a painful story that brought him to a place he never imagined. After retiring in 2023, he was diagnosed with cancer, and during that time, he started writing his book, Compassion in the Court, which was published this year, 2025. There's an interesting story behind Judge Frank Caprio's attitude that dates back to his grandparents. They were completely illiterate when they migrated from Italy to Providence City. Things were so bad that Grandpa used to make a living by selling fruits from a cart. One day he was drinking and making a ruckus with his friends, and the police caught them. Frank K.O.'s grandma borrowed money from the neighbors and went to court. To get her husband released, she offered money to the judge right in front of everyone, using broken English and gestures. Their little son Tap, who knew a bit of English, was there with them. The judge called Tap over and told him to take his mom and dad home because they were being released. When Tap told his mom about it, so she just told the judge a prayer and left. This little kid wasn't just anyone. He was actually Judge Frank Caprio's father, who was lovingly called Tap. Frank Caprio says that sure, this case happened way before he was born, but hearing about how that judge behaved still sticks with me. Even today, when I see immigrants in my courtroom, I think of my grandparents, and I do everything I can to make sure they don't face any trouble. Frank Caprio's father's real name was Antonio Caprio Jr., but everyone called him Tap. When Frank Caprio's dad came to America, they lived in a one-room apartment with no hot water. There were 12 people in that one room, and they only had one lamp for light. Frank had to drop out of school in 7th grade and started helping his dad, who was Frank's grandfather, to support the family. Their situation was so bad that their empty pockets would often gather lint, but Frank Caprio wrote that sometimes they didn't even have lint in their pockets. Frank Caprio was born on November 24, 1936, and he lived there with his dad, Tap, and mom, Philomena. They started living in a small one-room house with cold water. Whenever they needed a shower, they had to travel several kilometers. Frank's dad, Tap, tried setting up various small businesses, but nothing worked because of the Great Depression. Eventually, he got a job distributing milk, and from a young age, Frank Caprio also helped him out. One time when Frank was 8 years old, he had to deliver milk to a house. It belonged to a wealthy man whose son went to the same school as Frank. Early one morning, standing by a bare tree, Frank knocked on the door of that house, and from inside, smell of amazing toast started filling the air. When the door opened, his schoolmate was sitting at the breakfast table crying. Frank thought maybe he'd invite him in for breakfast, but instead he was getting scolded by his dad. His dad pointed at the crying boy and said, "Be thankful you're lucky. Otherwise, you'd be out there in the snow, milking cows like this guy." Little Frank Caprio felt so hurt by this that even after 80 years, he wrote it down exactly as it happened in his book. But one thing was for sure, Frank Caprio's childhood wasn't exactly easy. They got through some tough times, but they were really happy with their life because that's just how they were raised. Things were so bad that on cold winter nights, they didn't even have a blanket to keep warm. The milk company only gave one blanket, and they used it to cover the milk so it wouldn't freeze. At night, Frank Caprio and his brother shared that same blanket. Since the blanket had milk cream on it, a rat would come every night to eat the cream, which really scared Frank Caprio. He was just 16 years old. One day, Frank's dad put his hand on his shoulder and said, "You're going to be a lawyer one day, but remember this, never charge poor people a fee." At that time, Frank was still in high school and did a bunch of part-time jobs to get by. He worked with his dad delivering milk, handed out newspapers, set up pins at a bowling alley, waited tables at a restaurant, and even sat by the roadside polishing people's shoes to cover his expenses. After high school, he got admitted to a college in Providence. He went. Back then, coming from a poor family, just making it to college was a huge deal. Out of their 45 cousins, Frank Caprio was only the second one to reach college. In his final year, he applied to Boston Law University, which had always been his dream. But studying there meant giving up all his part-time jobs. And if he did that, how would he manage to get by? He did get accepted to the university, but Frank knew well that his parents couldn't afford the expenses. So instead of going to university, he took up a teaching job during the day and started studying law at another university at night. During this time, something happened with Frank Caprio that left a deep scar on him, one he could never forget. One day after returning from law college, a classmate gave him a ride home. Frank lived in a run-down clapboard apartment that looked really bad from the outside. Seeing his place, the classmate told him that if he wanted to become a successful lawyer, he couldn't be living in a house like that. Frank felt really hurt at that moment, but he just said thank you and walked away. But he never forgot that incident for his entire life. After becoming a lawyer, he also stepped into politics and even once ran for the position of Attorney General. However, the opposition party falsely accused him of organized crime and ruined his reputation. After that, he went back to practicing law. One day, Frank Caprio was having lunch when suddenly he got a phone call from the city mayor. The mayor told Frank that one of the 3 municipal court judges in Providence. The transfer happened, and now a seat opened up. Frank didn't understand why the mayor was telling him this right now. The mayor said, "I think you're absolutely perfect for this position." Frank had never felt happier. It wasn't just a proud moment for him, but for his parents too. Frank had also been the Caprio wrestling champion, and whenever he had a match, his dad was always there to watch. Just like that, when Frank became a judge, on his first day in court, people were also there to watch the proceedings. The first case was about a woman who had hundreds of dollars in parking tickets. As soon as she came in, she started being rude to Judge Frank Caprio. She said she wasn't going to pay the fines, claiming she had kids to take care of. Judge Frank Caprio put her on a payment plan so she could pay in installments. But the woman was still being stubborn and said no matter what, she wasn't going to pay. Judge Frank Caprio got angry right then and there and put a boot on her car. They got the case dismissed by paying the fine. That means his car won't be allowed on the road until the fine is paid. After the court session, Tapp scolded Frank badly. He said, "How is that woman going to drop her kids at school or get groceries now?" Right from the start, Tapp was frowning and clearly not happy. That day turned out to be a major turning point in Frank Caprio's life. After that, he decided that before making any judgment against a defendant, he would first consider how the decision would affect their family. He said, "It was that scolding from his dad that taught him what he couldn't learn even in 5 years of law college." After that, Judge Frank Caprio set up a donation fund and named it the Philomena Fund after his mom. This fund helps those in need who can't pay fines. Judge Frank Caprio became famous through a TV show called Caught in Providence. The story behind it is that the judge's brother Joe loved shooting videos. He used to make videos of different things but was always on the lookout to capture a great scene. One day, the idea was to record courtroom proceedings. Judge Frank Caprio was really against this idea, but Joe managed to convince him somehow. The show was called Court in Providence, and it aired on local cable TV. Since Frank was a judge, he didn't take any fees for it. At first, the show only aired on local TV, but after social media came along, copies got uploaded online, and now these proceedings are watched all over the world. In this way, Judge Caprio, with his kindness and empathy, not only he became famous not just among the people, but worldwide as the nicest judge. After serving in this position for 38 years, Judge Frank Caprio resigned in January 2023. A few months later, he revealed to the world that he was battling a disease like cancer. On August 20th, 2025, he was seen in a hospital bed, making a video asking his fans for their prayers. The next day, August 21st, 2025, he passed away forever. He left behind courtroom memories that continue to inspire us. You learn lessons in empathy, kindness, justice, and controlling your anger. Hope you all like and share this video. Thanks so much for your loving comments. See you in the next awesome video.